first of all. I think it's we'll introduce the BAFTA-nominated Paul Rose, which is often known as Mr. Biffo on the Digitiser service. We'll have some... Oh yes, a round of applause. This gentleman's very well known for the Worms and various other teletext graphics. It started at Ladbrokes and then came up all the way through being the only salaried contracted employee of Teletext Limited, I believe.
Yeah, Graham and I were just talking about.
That's it. All right. There's unfinished business there, I think. So yes, and then obviously a man who needs no introduction is Ian Irving of Intel Fax and CFax, the very first Teletext star, and the second ever salaried employee of CFax, I think, isn't it? Second sub-editor.
You're the second sub-editor of CFax, is that right? Yes, that's right. Brilliant.
And the third person to this, and not in any means of any importance at all, but the man next to me here is the Teletext Supremo, the birth of horse and borders, as we call them in the Teletext art trade. It's our very own Steve Horsley. We do have some slides of the various artworks going through, and we'll run through them while we're doing the panel. If anybody would like to ask any questions of people, please put your hands up and we'll come over and get a microphone to you. Alternatively, if you like, I don't know if you're like me, but you have an argument, you think, I should have said that, but you like down the M11, you could just write down a question there later on and we'll make sure we'll get an answer to you, hopefully. Okay, so never opening up a panel before, what do we do next? I guess we ask some questions, don't we? So, yeah, that's it. I would like to ask a question first, just open up with Ian. I would just like to ask, a lot of people have been asking about the techniques that you used on your hands up animation, and we had a really good question from an audience member, and I'm going to try and find them to see if they can ask you that question. So who had that really good question for? It was Pixelblip. It was you. It was you. It was Mr. Pixelblip. So I'm going to hand the mic over to you, and you can open up with the first question. There you go.
Right, back here again, Ian. Okay, hi. Do you wish you had a mouse making hands up? Do you wish you had a mouse when you made hands up? It would have made it a lot easier, wouldn't it?
I don't think it would. By then I got so used to using the keyboard. More or less, without really thinking about it, the key was so I don't think the
I could open up generally to the other two artists that we got here as well, because when that question was asked, I saw everyone else go, "Nah, we don't like using a mouse or anything here." So I think same question to you, Paul. I mean, what would you prefer, and why?
I tried doing Teletext with a mouse, and because of the size of the pixels, it tends to sort of overcompensate and overshoot. So I find it harder to be precise. It's whereas it's fine for using it for Photoshop or something like that. I don't know about you, Steve. Have you ever used a mouse for Teletext? I've tried to.
I have tried to, and it's just unusable. It has to be the keyboard, just the keyboard.
Yeah, it's that, the double press.
Yeah.
If any of you have ever done Teletext graphics, it becomes second nature. You can do it as fast as using a mouse for Photoshop.
I think a lot faster.
Faster.
Yeah.
Gives you RSI. I've had that a few times.
Thank you. So, with all your various teletext journeys that all three of the panellists have been on, with the inspirations that you've had, I understand that Ian came from a print media background, so he was probably the first to have all these ideas. Whereas these guys, would you consider yourself like a second generation teletext artist?
I mean, my kind of speciality was large pixels, which I guess is all you had back then. But I started off where I learned teletext was at Ladbroke Racing, because they had a teletext page, but they also had their own in-house system. It was actually slightly higher resolution than teletext, but it was basically worked in the same way. In fact, Steve worked there as well. I mean, Steve and I went to school together, which is how Steve came to work at Ladbrokes and Teletext. We knew each other. But after Ladbrokes, I then went to work at Wembley Stadium, which on the scoreboard, doing graphics for their scoreboard. And there, the pixels were literally light bulbs. To the point that if you had a dead pixel on the scoreboard, I had to climb up to the top of the stadium. There you go, there we are. And each of those pixels was a light bulb, and part of my job was to go and replace the light bulbs. If we had one out, we had to walk across a gangplank, 150 feet above the stadium, reach outside and just do that. It was, so that was sort of my thing. And when I met with Graham at Teletext, I had a portfolio with my Ladbrokes and Wembley Stadium art in it. But it was chunky pixels, whatever the medium was sort of my thing.
Okay, Steve, I'd just like to follow on from that then. When you came into the pixel art scene, or the sixel art scene, as we say, because it's only the six, with like standard computer graphics, it's like an 8x8. And you wouldn't believe how much freedom that gives you. When you've only got six, it's a complete nightmare when you draw in circles. So that could give you PTSD. But so when Steve came into art, then were you already aware of Paul's artwork?
Yeah, I can't follow Paul's stuff all the time. I was a huge fan of his cartoons, his illustrations.
Well, it was mutual. We were in the same art club. We were best friends at school. We went on holiday together. We kind of just drew pictures all the time.
Yeah, we got thrown out of art almost. The art teacher hated us.
Yes.
Yeah. Wouldn't follow the rules. But it was amazing when Paul gave me the opportunity to follow him into Ladbrokes when he left Ladbrokes. And Ladbrokes you could animate the pages in Ladbrokes, so...
Yeah, that was the big difference with Ladbrokes in-house and also with Wembley, was animation. I mean, it was actually, I think with Ladbrokes, what was it, 16 frames of animation you had? Something like that, so there was a lot of repetition to get anything lasting longer than kind of about 10 seconds.
But then you could repeat it and it just looked really good.
So that was, and likewise with Wembley, again, it was limited numbers of frames you could have because there was so little memory stored. But Steve was, the best artist I knew, which is why I kind of kept recommending him to people.
Yeah, and I took the jobs quite quickly when I was offered them. But definitely, obviously Ian is the OG and his stuff, there's nothing quite like that. To start with no one to reference and produce, for example, that animation we just saw, I've never seen anything like that. I'm completely blown away by it. I would never even, I've been asked before, can I do animations? And it's like, no. I would never even try it, but to see that amazing animation we just saw, it blew me away completely.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Ian's art was the reason, really, that I kind of had a fascination with this sort of low resolution. You were a huge influence on me. 40 was, that was why I ended up creating Turn of the World, was because I've loved watching 40 and reading 40 when I was a kid. So, I wanted to create my own version. But Ian's art, for me, was always... I mean, I'm quite, as my wife will attest, I'm quite maximalist. I think you're quite similar to me in that way. The thing that always impressed me with Ian's art was how minimalist it is and how he did a lot with very few lines. I was always scared by whole graphics. any of that, and backgrounds and things. So I kind of ended up doing the whole black lines thing, which Steve did as well.
Because I can't do-
Oh, it's so clean. And I was a bit intimidated by him. He's a legend.
Yeah. I mean, I was the same with whole graphics. I still can't use them.
Yeah.
I still can't do it. So it's just black borders. Put the codes in the black space.
For a little bit of context for people who are a hold graphic, it's like the offside rule. It's really hard to explain, but when you do it, you understand that you just shouldn't need to use it. It allows you to change something very quickly in a page without needing a gap, because you'll notice that in Teletext there's a lot of gaps. In these gaps, there's instructions, and the instructions are telling the next pixel what to do. You see, now with a whole graphic, it's like a cheat code, because you can trick it into just sort of going, right, we'll do the next thing, but without that instruction in. So you can change a colour, or you can move a graphic. But the payoff is that it has to be exactly the same shape attribute. So you can't really sort of like do much with it, and it just looks as if it's been through a mincer when you've done. In fact, if I can get Mr. Pixelblip just to stand up and show his T-shirt, that will show you a real effective use of whole graphics. Thank you very much. Lovely, cheers. So, what I would like to do is ask you, Ian, do you have a particular favourite piece of artwork that you've done in your career?
I wouldn't say a particular favourite. I suppose I was quite pleased with in the beginning of CFAX. We were discovering what you could do with graphics. We used to put our experimental designs on the back page when nobody would see them anyway. But we could try things out that way. One of the things I tried was to emulate a black and white wood engraving print that I'd seen, which was simply that, just black and white, and then the artist had managed to create an impression of null without using any shading or gradations at all. It was just black and white, and I thought, well, that could translate very well in Teletext, just a few contrasts, and that was what I came up with. That was, in a way, a favourite, because I discovered one way of using the limited Teletext graphics that we had. Then there are others, various illustrations for trails, for TV programs, one for a series book built in Britain, that was using simple rules of perspective to give you a feeling of depth. Instead of just looking at the flat screen on the same thing, feel that you were looking into I need to play around with that sort of
Well, thank you, Ian. I really enjoyed the perspective one there as well, and it goes to show that less is always more on this medium. The more that you twiddle with it, the worse it tends to look. So when you get something like that, and also with the clear wood carving, it's very good contrast. There's no in between. It's either there or it isn't. And I think the use of what you're not using on a teletext screen is just as powerful as what you are as well, which you'll find in a lot of these artworks. Paul, do you have a particular favourite? I mean, you did a lot of pin-ups for the digitizer thing. I like the Mitchell brothers. That was always a favourite of mine.
Turn of the Worm was where I got to really play around with graphics, and that was where I think I learned. I mean, I always considered myself more a teletext cartoonist, whereas Ian was a teletext artist. Turn of the Worm was that sort of writ large, and it was doing that. I'd find techniques of how to kind of make perspective work. I would, things in the far distance. If I was drawing a cave, the back of the cave would be black, then kind of the cave kind of go a bit nearer would be the blue, the dark blue. Backgrounds I often did as blue, but it was weird. You were sort of trying to play almost psychologically with the perspective of the audience, I think, in some respects. Like we had kind of default walls that it became the, if you all know Bamba Boozler, that was yellow was a skin tone, even though I don't know why it was yellow and not white, but that became the teletext sort of Caucasian skin tone. So there you go. There's one. Thank you, Peter. There you go. There he is. There's Bamba. So in terms of, there were a lot of Turn of the Worm ones. I think I did a Turn of the Worm where he went into the future. Time travel. He had a time machine that was shaped like an ape for some reason. I remember he went into some post-apocalyptic future, and it was a graphic of a ruined city that I did, that I always remember being quite proud of. Yeah.
And Steve Horsenberger has done thousands of images now. And I think it would be really unfair to ask him what his favourite bit of artwork is. What do you think? Yeah, I think. What was your favourite bit of artwork, Steve?
Recently, I think I did the What We Do in the Shadows cast. And I think they worked out really well because they're very different colours and shading and light effects. I think they worked really well. But I think I'm kind of happy with everything I post up, but there are ones I post up that I'm not happy with. So usually the ones people would request, because I'm very bad at doing things that people want rather than things that I want to do. So if I get asked to do something, that's when I struggle. But yeah, so I think I'm happier with more than not.
Well, it's a fair comment, and I think you've probably all noticed already how the three styles in the same medium differ. And there's quite a few people now that are being inspired by these three gentlemen that will now come in and look at their own art form in a perspective like that. And that's the most powerful thing about Teletext. It's got the most restrictive rules. It's probably the most difficult thing to actually get an idea on, but you can see there's like Hopper there. Everyone knows that's Hopper without without needing to know what the colour of the drink is or whatever that they're holding in the bar. And that's just the incredible thing about it. And it's become its own teletext medium now. It's even judged in art categories all around the world in countries where they never even had teletext in the first place. I mean, there's a teletext art competition in Argentina. It's actually got up there with a lot of art modes as well. So it's we've got a lot to be grateful for with these three gentlemen up here at the moment. So if you were, I think I'd like to ask all three of you in turn really that if Teletext was still going today as a service, what extra feature would you want in there? But you still had to keep it blocky. So what would you add? I think I'll put that to Paul first.
It weirds me out how it's become such a life after what we did, because it's become that people are using teletext as a medium in itself. Whereas for me, when I worked there, it was a limitation. So even though, you know, work within the confines of that limitation, I always yearn for what, you know, Photoshop, what became Photoshop. You know, like I said, Graham sent me on a Photoshop course, and it was like, what? This is what I wanted to be doing. You know, I can do art that doesn't look like that anymore. But I think as time has gone on, I've sort of so appreciated how, you know, people have just embraced that. So that was what I always wanted. I just wanted to be able to do art that you know had higher resolution. But if you kind of limited me with in terms of sort of keeping it blocky, I don't know, because teletext is teletext, and if you change it too dramatically, we had. Some of you may be aware there was a level 2, there was a level 3 as well, Graham, was that?
It was level 5.
Level 5 it went up to. Oh, okay, yeah. Well, there were, yeah. It wasn't just, you know, what we had. There were talks of sort of bringing in these sort of which had more colours, and I definitely did at least a trial Turn of the Worm script. I remember doing one. I think it was. I remember drawing a graphic of Turn of the Worm, you know, an Egyptian pyramid, and you know the statues were gold, and you know, and it looked gold, but it didn't look like teletext anymore, and somehow it wasn't as satisfying. It still had the resolution. I think there was something you could do, you know, some shapes so that you could cut off corners, and they were almost 50%. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there are 5 levels of teletext. That's level 1.
Right.
And I think that the one that we really wanted to play around with was level 2.5, which is where you can round the corners, and you know it was much higher resolution, but it ain't that. And I think that has a very special place in the hearts of a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think the idea that photo teletext was going to come eventually was never going to happen, because the decoders were going to be incredibly expensive. And it meant that all those people who'd gone out and bought level 1 teletext sets were going to have to throw them away and, you know, get something more expensive.
And it ceases to be teletext, which has become this thing that's become.
That's the point. It's not teletext, and the skills that you 3 guys have, I think, have made a niche for themselves with all those people who used teletext over the years, and you made it a very personal medium. You know, okay, it was born by giving people news, sport, business, weather, whatever, but the kind of cartoons and the animations that Ian produced are just what makes it so special, in my view. I'm a bit biased, admittedly.
Well, yes, yeah. I mean, I think we all, you know, I think now we've all got ourselves, you know, that nostalgia for it and that fondness for it. But yeah, it's like the, you know, photo teletext to come in. It would just be the internet. Is anyone gonna be nostalgic for the internet in 30 years' time? No, this has become, you know, because of what it was, is why it's beloved.
Yeah, I agree with that very much. I think higher resolution would be great. I just wonder whether artwork in a higher resolution would be as good. Could end up looking a bit amateurish, whereas with limited resolution, you've always got that kind of excuse. It's amazing what you can do. So yeah, I've never really looked for anything further. I never had a chance to play with
We've got a question from the audience there? Oh, yep. I'll take a question from you, and I'll take a question from you, sir. Thank you.
My name's Robert. I'm very interested in teletext, from the beginning, My question is, did anybody ever try to do anaglyphic 3D television, teletext? You put the specs on. I've still got my VHS copy of the famous, was it on ITV? I can't remember, related to the 3D television, and you got a free pair of specs. And I do have a 3D decoder thing that you plug into an analog source, like a VHS machine, and it converts it to the colours you put the specs on. So 3D teletext art would be a good thing to try.
Well, there is the whole red on blue thing. It isn't that, where you've got the two different glasses, but there is a weird optical illusion effect where graphically, if you have red superimposed over blue graphics, the red kind of jumps, it does a weird thing to your eyes, but it is a kind of subtle 3D effect that you can play around with.
I can actually add to that, because I was trying to experiment with 3D teletext just like purely by getting a lighter blue and the red, and if you can get them just far enough apart, you can, on a white background with the glasses on, it does leap out at you, but it's a hell of a... You can only do a couple of shapes. I did one of a space rocket once, but I ended up telling everybody that it's a space rocket. So I guess that didn't work out too well. But there was one thing that I was actually considering, because I was going to ask Steve a slightly different question on that. How would you enhance teletext in a way and keep it blocky? And I think going to 16:9 televisions, if we were able to use the extra pixels either side, we could use some of the examples of Steve's work where he has used more than one screen, and it gave it a lot of definition. So what we'll do, we'll bring up an image now and show you what teletext would have looked like today on a 16:9 TV. Okay, so there you go. You can see there he's actually used 4 screens. Well, it's more than 4 screens, isn't it, Steve? It's only 2 screens. There you go. So it's amazing what you can get on 2 lots of teletext at once. So, had the plug not been pulled, we might be getting far more information on one screen. More holidays to buy, everybody. So there you go. Okay. And there was another audience member that wanted to ask a question. I believe it's Graham.
If you remember, Paul, over in the corner, there used to be a camera that we would put images below it, and that camera was called a digitizer, and it was about 6 feet away from USAT, so maybe that was the influence. It seemed at the time there were only sort of 2 types of artists: those that would start off with the camera and then tidy it up, and then people like yourselves that is all handcrafted. Do you ever use any sort of digitizer camera? Have you ever gone back to the cheating approach to this?
I ended up, we had in the kids section, remember the kids would send in artwork, and the idea was we'd digitise the artwork and put it out, and kids would have their art on there. I found it easier to just copy it again by hand, because the digitizer would have so much, would have so much kind of corruption, and, straight pixels. It's just easy. I'll just copy it. So I don't know. What was the question again? That was it. Yeah. I did when I worked at Wembley. We had one there, and again, it was the same situation. All I ever used to do, because there were long days at Wembley where there was nothing going on, I used to digitise my face and see my face on the Wembley scoreboard. But it was the same situation. It was, the scanning and the digitising kind of technology was so basic back then. Sometimes it was just easier to do it again.
Yeah, I used the digitizer once, I think, and then it's easy just to do it by hand, just quicker. I think I've used the tracing function once or twice where you can import an image, but again, it's just easier just to block it out and then chop away the pixels until you get what you want. Just easier.
Did you use any easy tricks at all, Ian? Was it just all keyboard for you when you were doing the images?
Yeah, I think that virtually all the keyboard. We did have a digitizer CMAX, but I think we made very limited use of it because of the inaccuracy. It was always quicker to do it with the keyboard.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Right, we've got a few hands flying up, which is excellent because it saves you having to listen to me too much. So I'll hand you over. There's a gentleman just in the back here. If you can just give your name and then ask away.
Hello. Oh. Yeah, I've got a loud voice. I'll hold it a bit away. My name's Dan, Sound and Vision on the Discord server. So I'm on this topic. So sort of later on in Teletext, there was a lot of sponsorship and advertisement pages. So when you dealt with the advertising firms, did they provide you like a photograph that you would then have to digitize, or was it just left up to yourself just to draw it? And then were they upset because they were like, it's not detailed enough? And that's about it.
I did a lot of my work in the marketing department and the advertising team, and there was lots. I can't ever remember anybody ever asking to do something the second time or change it. But there was a lot, holiday logos, companies, and all that sort of thing, and did a 3DO. There's all sorts of various things, but we just pretty much left to it, and no one ever really came back. Apart from you made a spelling or a pricing mistake on the holidays, which happens every so often. Yeah.
I never did current marketing or advertising. That was Steve's department.
So, yeah, I can't even remember if people provided us with things, but often they were very well-known brands, and it was just easy to do.
Yes, I could imagine the advertisers. I think you mentioned in a previous conversation we had that providing you moved 1 pixel on a palm tree,
Oh, yeah.
they were all right.
Yeah, everybody wanted their own. I want palm tree and a cruise liner in the background and an aeroplane. Okay, well, I've got 300. No, it's got to be this one for me. Just redo it. Yeah, and it was just constantly just redoing the same building on a beach with a cruise liner in the background and then 400 different prices on the same thing. Yeah, it was a challenge. It was great.
That's it. Was there a question? Yes, sir. There you go.
Hello, Tim. It's not actually a question, really. It's a sort of with a query. If any of the panel were aware that Ralph Steadman did teletext images, I'm not sure that they ever actually got published, and of course he wouldn't have let us keep them anyways because he famously does. But we were a media press tel startup, and we had him come in. I had to show him how to do the technology, obviously, because nobody else knew what it was. And, he did his famous, Maggie images and things like this. It would be about 1981. But I don't imagine anywhere we can find any copies of it. So.
That'd be amazing to find if we could find that somewhere.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine how that would work because his art style is so those big sweeping kind of lines. It's sort of really messy. So.
Yes, and I don't think he was particularly delighted with the results, so that's why I'm saying maybe it never even got published. But
I think that's where if you did it with a mouse, it would work. Yeah, that would have the same effect, I think.
Yeah, I always thought that the Margaret Thatcher one was Noel Edmonds. I don't know. Yeah, that's it. It's who you see first, and that's who they remain in the mind. And I think that's really good. Do we have any more questions? Oh, we do. I'm just going to go over here. There you go, sir.
Hi. Obviously you had a limited colour palette. Was there a particular colour that you often wished you used?
Orange.
Orange always comes up.
Sorry, the question was a black hole color. Yeah. have it.
Thank you for that. Anybody got any comment? Oh, yes. There you go.
In more recent years, have any of you ever done any teletext art for any of the teletext services that are currently still running outside the UK?
I did every year artists, an animator, an artist. Just it's like the only time all year they have a month where they put on teletext art, and they are often asked different artists. I think it was 2018 or 2020. I did a whole load of those. I think some of these ones on here we've got on the sheet were from that. So I did a different piece of art every day for them, and they put it on the system. I know Dan has done it as well. So yeah, there are still countries, and I think Finland are putting some on.
Yeah, Teletext run an advent calendar every year where they ask like teletext artists to send things in, and Dan Farriman runs that, who's at our Wigan office today, and he always worries he doesn't get to Christmas Day with the amount of artwork that he's asking for. He got to the 6th of January last year, so it's catching on really well. And Matti Ramu of Teletext in Finland, he's in a international art sort of syndicate in a way, so a lot of the artwork from remaining teletext services from British artists, American artists, and you know, a real global thing now, actually still get used, you know, and it gets seen by real unsuspecting people in other parts of the world. So yeah, it's still very much a thing. Have you been asked to do anything, Paul, because of this teletext resurgence? I mean, I don't know if anyone noticed the really well done McDonald's advert. I really liked it. I think they should stick to making burgers personally, because, or actually just ask somebody who can get on Alistair Cree's ZX text editor and just do it properly and follow the rules. Anyway, so that's off my soapbox there. So yeah, Paul, have you been asked?
I might have done bits and bobs. I can't remember. I mean, since all this kind of exploded and teletext became a thing again, you know, albeit in a hobbyist way, I'm pretty sure I have, but not, you know, kind of in a big official capacity, but part of sort of art competitions and things. I think I've done some. I mean, it's weird now, even though I haven't done it as a job for 20 odd years, I haven't forgotten how to do it. I mean, the Edit TF, you know, the teletext editor that's online, you know, when that, you know, the second I learned about that, I was straight on it. And it took, you know, okay, a couple of minutes, and then it was like, that was it. It was as quick as it always was. So I'd love to do more. I've done bits and bobs. Someone wrote a new Turn of the Worm story. Who was that? Was that Dan? And I ended up doing a kind of final page for it.
Yeah, I think that was Miss Chris, wasn't it, from Canada?
Oh yes, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I can't remember now. It was a couple of years ago, but you know, and that actually, when I did the new Turn of the Worm, it was like, oh, God, I'd love to do some more of this. Because I really enjoyed doing it.
Just want to ask you, you mentioned Turn of the Worm. Obviously, there was another service that you did do as well for the After Hours. Was that Turn of the Screw?
Turn of the Screw, yeah, not written by me. I mean, Graham can probably tell you a bit more about the origins of that. I just did the artwork, but that was didn't last long, did it?
Yeah. Oh, right, okay. What was the idea behind Turn of the Screw, then, Graham?
Well, I think looking back at it, it was probably an adult version of Turn of the Worm, and that's what it was. I mean, there were so many ideas that we had to give the service more of a visual personality, and I mean, very early on, I always wanted Mr. Men, if you remember that, and Roger Hargreaves, the creator of the Mr. Men books, he had died, and his daughter came in, and the company wanted thousands and thousands.
I did some mock-ups.
Yeah. And I came over to you and said, could you come up with a cartoon which looks like Mr. Men? And I think that's what prompted Turn of the Worm. But yeah, the whole graphic side of it, we needed this thing to come to life. And there was a great pressure to make this a mass consumer thing, and that, you know, which we'll deal with later. But The graphics really lifted it. But yeah, I can talk briefly about a little bit more about Midnight Blue, as it used to be called, and then it became After Hours and the demise of that later.
There you go. There's stay tuned for more on that as well. That's it. So, but yeah, I think with all the services and everything that these guys have worked on, and it's and now with people now looking back and going, oh, yeah, 8-bit, teletext, blah blah blah, and they're bringing it all back. It's become a bit of a zeitgeist and a real go-to. So I hope that if they do carry on wanting to reflect it in the media, that they do actually go to some of the people that are just happen to be pretty good at it. So I think what we'll do, if that's okay with everyone now, we'll wrap the panel up and thank our guests very much for their time. First of all, I'd like to thank Paul Rhodes de Biffo, so a round of applause for Paul. Followed by Steve Horsley over there on the right. And I hope we've saved all our energy for that man in the middle, Mr. Ian Irving. Thank you very much again. It's been an absolute pleasure, and let's not wait 50 years for the next one. Okay, I'm not sure on the running order, but if everyone wants to run, take various comfort breaks, enjoy everything. And also, what we forgot to mention at the back there, Wayne's Televisions, which is the source of the heating for today, is actually displaying some of Paul's later work. So this was the work that he did when he found that Edit TF he was talking about, and he thought, you know what, I'll put some comedy ideas down there, and there's some really good one there. I recommend the Tea Prancer. So yeah, go over there and have a look at that. So I'm not sure what time we're all getting back, but we will be back at some point. I know at 2 o'clock there's going to be the Teletext Sofa Club. So if we can get back for then, refreshments are available outside. Let's all hit the dance floor for the fighting.